And I remember walking to this very, very narrow pass, cliffside, just big drop, all the way down to the bottom. And then sheer mountain on one side. And I'm walking and the ground just gives way. I got my rucksack on, weapon, night vision goggles, everything, and it just gives way. And the whole ground just like falls away. I do not know why, but at the moment, total God thing. But I like grabbed my hand on the last little ledge that I could grab, and you want
like
to
a
talk
movie,
about,
like a movie,
yeah, like a movie. And you want to talk about my fingers have never been stronger, man. And so I'm just sitting there, and I'm just holding on.
There's a moment in every hard thing, a race, a climb, a training block, a season of life, where you hit the edge of what you thought you could do. Most people stop there, but some don't.
And this show is all about the ones who didn't. What they found on the other side, what they learned about themselves, and how those lessons followed them into every hard thing they came after.
I'm Nathan Baumeister.
And I'm Matt Carlson.
This is What Remains, an Okape podcast. Joseph Cabrera, man, I'm so excited to have you on What Remains.
Brother, I'm so excited to see both of your faces. Anytime I get to see Nathan's face and now Matt, fires me up. So good to be on the show, man. Thanks for having me.
We were just talking ahead of time. Joseph is a longtime podcast host across a couple different shows, and we were talking how weird it is to kind of move from the host seat to the guest seat. So excited to have you on the hot seat now, just a little bit.
Yeah, man. Super good. I don't know. I was joking with with some friends the other day. There was a period of my life where I could basically communicate everything in movie quotes. And I think we just had a really good string of movies that came out.
Matt's so excited right now.
You have no idea. I'm just you had me at movie quotes.
Broke your love language. Yeah,
did.
man. But as soon as you said that, it made me think of Ricky Bobby being like, it's when I'm on the other side of the mic, it's like I do not know what to do with my hands, man. I have no idea what to do with my hands. Yeah, wait, you asking me questions? I don't know what to do here.
But we do know when you wake up in the morning, you piss excellence. That's for sure.
Oh no, this episode is already going off the rails.
Yeah. So good, man. But great to be here, boys. Man, thanks for having me.
We're happy to have you. I've had the great benefit and privilege of working with you in the past and knowing you for a very, very long time. But we would love to let our listeners get to know you just a little bit. So if you could just, high level, just introduction, kind of with the focus of when it comes to physical pursuits, what's your, what's your weapon of choice, if you will, or weapons?
Yeah, man, maybe multiple there. Yeah, I'm Joseph, and I'm probably addicted to adventure more than I think some people would like to admit. I've spent the better part of a decade in the military. It's kind of where I cut my teeth. And then after that, really got to get into the private sector world, but never really kind of stopped doing things in the mountains. And being a South Texas guy, did not grow up around mountains, but I think there's this part of you that, when you talk about nature and nurture, I was into the mountains the first time. I remember the first military school that I could sign up for and try out for was Chilean Mountain Warfare School. I have no idea why. The whole thing was in Spanish. I'd never been in a mountain. I mean, hills, not mountains before that. And so, but to me, there was just something that resonated. And so as time went by and really cut my teeth in a lot of really interesting places, and places you and I have overlapped there, Nathan, I was fortunate that kind of as of recent to start taking all the learnings from the service and all my learnings from the private sector and build a company called Wild Whisper, where we take executive people, adventurers, people who want to be in just these really intensive, immersive environments from Alaska to different parts of the world. And really, the thing that I saw missing in the private sector that we try to bring folks into is only shared experience and shared suffering really bring you into this world of truly not only operating more tightly as a team, but also be able to kind of really define and understand who you actually are, which I think is very much down y'all's fairway there. And so I've been really just fortunate that in addition to being a storyteller and, through the podcast and some other things, to really continue to keep this sense of adventure. So if I'm not usually on the laptop or talking to folks, you can usually find me in the mountains somewhere, from Africa to Alaska.
Well, and it's very true. Every time I'm texting with Joseph and I have a conversation, I know when he's on the mountains because I don't hear from him for about 2 weeks. And then I come back, it's like, hey!
Get out of the sticks, man. My bad. Yeah. Yeah.
I,
Man. I will tell you, I'm not that guy. I usually respond pretty quickly when I get a message. So yeah, Nathan, especially for Nathan. So if you don't hear from me, either it's
you're in
I'll
the
be back
mountains.
or something went really wrong.
Well, for those of you that have been following Matt and I and starting Okape and starting What Remains, I'm sure you heard a lot of resonant notes that Joseph just talked about in regards to kind of his life's work and his life's passion. He's going on about it in a slightly different way than we are, but in the end, it's to achieve the same thing. And it doesn't hurt that both of us are Rio Grande Valley natives down in South Texas. We're pretty much the highest point was the overpass, but pining for the mountains all the time.
Yeah, man, it's a unique world down there. It's weird. I mean, that's right. There's two people on this show that for some reason we must have drank different water or something, man.
Oh, the water is different there.
Yeah, yeah, it is. But we must have got a different kind of variation of it that somehow infused us with that mountain air addiction.
Absolutely. So when you think about kind of that life of adventure and getting that pull into it, when was it that you first really recognized it and fed into it kind of that first time?
Yeah, I think that probably, for me started, at least the thing that comes to my gut right now, probably started when I went to West Point for undergrad, and that's where I was getting cut my teeth in education in the military, and you was going to do that. And what happened was the first 2 summers are locked in. You're locked in there, and there's a mandatory kind of structured training. A lot of it is physical. But where I realized internally that I started to just have a natural draw towards something that was different. In the 3rd summer, so your junior year, you kind of get to pick what you want to do in the summer. And there's various things. And being a institution of rigorous academics, there is incredible academic opportunities. Everything from being like a junior diplomat, with State Department some places, or involving yourself in work at the Pentagon, or if you can imagine it, it's there. Go down and do a study with a PhD on something. There's just like anything you can imagine. But I was always drawn to the adventure stuff, like the things that were going to require us to be in the mountains for a long period of time and language I didn't understand. And like just the more austere, the better. And I think I started to realize about myself that my brain ticked a little bit different than probably most of my peers. And there was a couple of us that were that way. But I think as I reflect on where that came from, my parents are awesome parents, but none of them were mountaineers. The ideas of fun stuff growing up usually was going fast in cars and, doing what normal kids do in South Texas, but nothing with that adventurous like streak. So I think as I started to get introduced into what that world was like for me, I started to better understand that, oh man, you, for some reason or another, don't fight it, but you're into these things. And that's where it started, I think. After that was really where I think things started to solidify, and I'm sure we'll get to talk about that stuff, but that's where I started to recognize, this is something coming up in my blood that I can't explain, but I'm going in.
Before we jump into the adventure stuff, just this idea of West Point and joining the Army, I mean, if you want to go to a place that pushes you to find those physical limits and say, hey, you can go further.
Oh, physical and mental and spiritual and emotional. It's just going to push you, right? So.
Yeah. So was that the first time, like when you started going in there, that you actually got pushed to those points to kind of go beyond what you thought was possible? Like what you could do?
Before that, it was, there was no pressure in high school. There was you did physical things with your friends, whether it's sports or things for fun, but there was no it wasn't at that level where there was it was almost a mandate that you excel and that you push. And I think where I started to get a taste of it is just even the admission process, where my friends were filling out, basically their transcript. West Point had an entire physical test and regimen you had to do to even qualify to apply. And I remember being like, this is just, because I had some friends help me with it. And they're like, this is nuts, man, that you even have to do this, to even be qualified. And then when you get into the academy, they're also trying to decide where you go from a class perspective. So your first year, your freshman year at West Point, you take 3 mandatory classes in your first semester, which is just, it's crazy when I tell you what they are. And you can't even deselect out of it. You have to take it. But they're doing all these tests in the summertime when you get there to just see which extreme version of that class you have to take. So the first one you have to take is swimming, but we all call it drown proofing. And it's just, you're doing obstacle courses underwater. They push you in with full gear. They're dropping you. I mean, it's like, if you hate the water, you're going to be traumatized for a very long time. And for some reason, I got put in the advanced class. So there's like beginner, middle, and advanced. I am not an advanced swimmer, but maybe just better than the guys in the pool at the time. So I got advanced swimming. Then you're required to take boxing as a dude. So you have to take boxing. And really, it's more, you learn techniques and stuff, but it's really about learning how to get punched in the face and keep going. And then the last class that you take, they call it military movement. But Nathan, I think you'll enjoy this. The common moniker was gymnastics, is what we did. And I remember being like, I don't even know how to do a cartwheel, like, let alone now you're going to grade me on how to do go over the horse thing and then do a backflip. Like, at no point in time did I ever think this was going to be useful in the middle. I can imagine doing like a backflip in combat. Like, that just doesn't seem like a thing you need to do. Later on, you come
hold
to
on,
realize,
I have something I need to do.
Yeah.
Everyone stop shooting.
Okay. Hey, hold on, Mr. Bad Guy. I'm going to do something awesome,
It's intimidation for sure, right? So
Totally.
It's like capoeira. Yeah.
Totally, man. And you realize, like, they're not asking you to be proficient in any of those I mean, you're getting graded on it, but what they're trying to do is overwhelm your system with things that completely make you uncomfortable. There was, and especially like when it comes to boxing, I mean, most folks have never gotten in a fight before. And so, like, the ability to put you right in the middle of it, teach you the core skill sets, and then get right after it, that was like from the beginning. There was no easing into the water there. And so that's when I started to realize, like, okay, this place is going to be different than anything else. And I'll admit, there was probably for the first few semesters, I had kind of my letters from Texas and A&M and these other places I'd applied
The places
to.
that don't make you to be drown proofing and don't punch you in the face and don't try to teach you how to flip. Yeah.
I'd be looking at the letters once in a while and be like, maybe, maybe. But after a while, a weird thing happens. You start suffering with your other friends out there, your other buddies. And then there's something about it that it almost becomes like a sentimental artifact, these experiences that you can't, like, you don't want to get rid of them. And so, and I think they know that. I think the Academy, and it's been around since 1802. And so, for as long as it's been around, it's like, I think they recognize that there's a wisdom in just like, when we get these young leaders to a certain point and have them suffer for a long time, then they're not going to want to leave, And so, but we got to get them there first, which is probably why they could cram it all in the first semester, man.
Well, and not only they're not going to want to leave, but like, to be a soldier, you need to be able to push well past what you feel is comfortable or what you're used to or anything like that, right? So
That's right.
There's only so many ways to simulate it, and the physical modality, it's got to be in the physical modality, because that is going to be your profession.
Yeah, and I'm curious though, like, you kind of had a sense going into it, right? Because you had the physical demands ahead of time that you're doing with your high school buddies. You get there, and I'm sure it's way harder than you thought. At what point did you go from, oh my gosh, this sucks, to you talking about sure suffering, to where it's like something changed inside of you? You're like, all right, we got this. Like, what was that like?
I think at the Academy, when you get your second or third year, you're given responsibility for other cadets now at that point. The way the West Point GPA works, you get an academic GPA, you get a physical GPA, so that you're tested separately on all your physical abilities, and then you get what we call a military GPA. And a military GPA actually has to do with not only your military performance, but the people in your charge. Just to kind of make it a simple example, the average of their GPAs is your GPA. And so you end up becoming accountable very quick. And so to answer your question, Matt, I started to realize that when you then are responsible for, like, leading, inspiring, and helping others take courage, is when that became a little bit more like, okay, this either is for me or not. And I can either start to embrace what's happening here or not. And so, and there is a lot of folks that leave. The Academy gives you 2 years of like, you're not committed. You can leave at any point, transfer the credits. They wish you well. You don't owe them any money or nothing. But as soon as you walk in on your third year, you have to sign this document. It's kind of a brutal thing. You sign the document that says, from this point on, you are ours. If you leave, one of two things happen. You owe us, it is an obscene amount of money. It's like hundreds of thousands of dollars, or you become a non-promotable It's like the second or third high or lowest rank in the military. For 5 years, we send you to the operational force as like just above a private, and you are non-promotable. You just have to stay that rank for 5 years to pay your dues back. So don't quit. And so it's just like, and you like sign this thing that says, here I am. Because at this point now, they're going to really turn on the investment. The American tax dollars is about to like, they've already invested a lot in you. And now they're going to send you to airborne training, sapper school. They're going to like really, then they're going to bring in a lot of things that are going to make you truly, and especially that time being in a time of war, they're really going to put a lot of investment in you. And so they want to make sure you're in it for the right reasons. So I think the culmination of all those things, Matt, is really what kind of made me go, okay, let's embrace this thing and let's invest in the craft.
Was there a time when you're like, I might leave?
I to be very honest, first year, I think it was such a shock to the system. That what didn't help is I stayed in touch with some of my friends,
and they weren't doing any of that.
Dude, they were having fun on 6th Street. They were down at the Chicken at A&M. I mean, they were asking me what I was doing on Saturday night. And I was like shining my boots or getting my rucksack ready for a 12-mile movement tomorrow. And I asked them what they were up to. And they were, I think they were just getting back in at 2 or 3 in the morning. And so like, to me, there was like, oh man, am I missing out on my, you kind of feel this sense of like, are you missing out on your youth, or something like that. My mother put it very well. She's like, in those environments, you see these young folks they grow up very quickly. They become older quickly. You might be 21 or 20, but, you kind of were walking around, like you're somebody in your mid-30s. And so, yeah, I probably that first year. But after that kind of bonding happened, then I think it really just kind of went out of my mind and was like,
never
okay,
again.
This is what we're doing. Yeah.
So that was the catalyst, is like the shared, you mentioned this a few times now, the shared experience and shared suffering. Like you did it enough times and all of a sudden you're like, okay, like I'm not going to quit. It just like overnight, or is it kind of like a slow simmer to that decision?
There's a simmer. I think it was a culmination of a lot of things. There's like a moment even in my junior year, we call it cow year. So my junior year where I'm sitting there at the, one of our established little bars on the post there and hanging out with the guys and just like looking across the table and being like, if I leave now, I'm not going to be able to help my buddy Ryan when we were both in Afghanistan 2.5 years from now. And the idea of like abandoning him and not like seeing it through at that point was like almost an impossible reality for me to then at that point accept. Where earlier on, you're still like shocking the system. So you're like not even sure what to be aware of. And that's where that 3rd and 4th year, your junior and your senior year, are so important because they start bringing guys in from the force. The guys have been in theater, telling you about what's going on, how you deal with intense situations, leadership dilemmas, and that stuff. And it starts to become really real, And so I think between that and then, we all just kind of a simple moment is, we eat all 3 meals together at the academy. So breakfast, lunch, and dinner, all 4,000 of us form up. 20 minutes we eat, 20 minutes we leave. And every day when you would start breakfast, everybody's at attention. And, they do these announcements. And one of the last announcements is, fallen classmates that have just, passed away, in theater. These are brothers, these are sisters, these are friends, guys that we literally were seniors last year. We sent them off and now they're no longer with us. And so the idea, it's kind of odd, but I think the idea of not being a part of that became an impossible reality for me at some point, where it was like, okay, I could go back to Texas. I could sit there and probably have a really fun life, but almost like it would almost be deafening not to be a part of that. Even though it still became, it was excruciating in other ways when you started to kind of go through the other gates. So I think at some point it was a slow simmer, I guess, is, just all the collection of things kind of made you go, okay, I can't leave.
Well, thank you for sharing that. What a unique experience that so few people in this world will ever go through. But then, continuing on, you went into, full service with the Army upon graduation, but also kind of had this chance to explore that adventurous side of you. So what was next for you?
Yeah, what's next is what folks don't realize is after you do your 4 years there, you get minted as a brand new lieutenant. And I actually like the way the Marine Corps calls them. They call them platoon commanders. The Army calls them platoon leaders, but I like that platoon commander because you're responsible for this 30, 40 person organization and going to do things, and you kind of pick your individual specialty. So for me, it was airborne reconnaissance was my specialty. So jumping out of airplanes and going in ahead of a major formation, kind of sneak and peek around and kind of do those things. And so what you do is after the academy, depending on your specialty, can anywhere between 6 months to a year and a half of additional training before you even get to the guys. You got to go ahead and do all this extra stuff in your field. So what happened immediately afterwards, I had picked Alaska as I was eventually going to end up in Alaska in the only Arctic airborne unit in the military. So there's 6 airborne brigades. There's 6 places in the world you can go to that have the parachute specialty. I knew I wanted to jump out of airplanes. My father was a paratrooper, so I wanted to go do that too. 4 of them are at Fort Bragg, North Carolina. 1 is in Italy and 1 is in Alaska, and Alaska being specialized in the Arctic and mountain environment. And so that required all this additional training, from Chilean Mountain Warfare School all the way to other things. I have all the additional schools that I went to. The foundational one, the one that I would say even today, it is just absolutely, it's in the blood. I don't know how to explain it. I never thought that would be it. But any leader that is going to be responsible for a combat organization, be on the front lines, they will send you to attempt Ranger training. And so they will go out there, and Ranger training, for those who don't know what that is, from a time perspective, it can be as short as a little over 2 months. There's 3 phases. There's a kind of we call it Derby phase, but that's really kind of forest and kind of normal terrain, mountain phase, and swamp phase. And you kind of become specialized in those 3 worlds. It's specialized in small unit tactics and fighting in those worlds and leading folks. It's as short as a little over 2 months, but it can be as long as, some guys are there for like a whole year. We used to joke that like some guys' first duty station was Ranger training, because if you fail one of those phases, depending on how you fail, you can recycle again. Like they don't kick you out. You can stay as long as you want to earn those 6 little letters on a fabric tab that says Ranger on it. And so, so it's up to you if you want to stick around or not. The only way that you'd never are to return, which is just a cool military thing, is you're never to return ever if you get peered out. So you can actually hit all your marks at Ranger training. You can be the top guy. But if your people who you led during that organization, I think if you only have to have like 20% of them comment that they would like basically never share a foxhole with you, never to return, you're out.
Wow.
And so the military just recognizes like you got to be competent, and you have to be somebody who can be endeared, and the teaming stuff, like those 2 things have to work. And so anyway, Ranger training was lots of different training, but Ranger training, I would say, is where that physical, like you want to talk about like having a foundational reset of like what was required, was Ranger training. And again, to go back to what I was saying at the beginning, it is meant for as physical, mental, and spiritual of an experience that is. It is still the military's all branches of the service, Air Force, Navy. Everybody can go to Ranger training actually, because it is America's premier leadership combat school. They simulate combat situations there by the entire 2 months or longer. There's only 2 to 2.5 hours of authorized sleep. You burn about 14 to 15,000 calories a day with 100-pound rucksacks, and you're doing military movements and ambush training and everything nonstop. I went in at 175. I graduated 143 pounds. And
What?
you become like hallucinate. Like there's this like there's a lot of folklore around that school for a very particular reason, but it's the only way they can simulate combat conditions and actually who you're going to be as a leader once you've been put in that situation. And so all that to say is that Ranger training really was foundational to, I think, what I became as a leader. I think Ranger training definitely got out of me maybe what my parents already put in me, but there was a lot of things that I'm happy to dive into, but there was a lot of moments there and a lot of things I learned about myself that really kind of set a new standard for how I approach life, after that.
Yeah, you want to talk about stripping everything away to find out what remains. No sleep, little food, physical activity, extended periods of time, knowing you're being judged. Wow.
Yeah, I remember getting a mountain phase as the second phase. First phase had beat the heck out of us. And getting to mountain phase, and there's this guy there. It's the guys that recycled. That's what we call it. The guys who didn't make it through that phase, they failed something or whatever, they got hurt, so they like hold over until the next phase starts. And this guy goes, and it's typical for the guys that have been there at the phase to go meet the new guys that are getting to the phase and like help them with bags or something, and because they're just yelling at you, and it's kind of. So this guy helps, and this guy, still remember, he's got no he's got 2 fingers are gone. And I'm like, hey, man.
Where'd they go?
Well, I was like, hey, man, I got this bag. It sounds like your hand's jacked up or whatever. Yeah, I was like, hey, man, what, you born that way? He goes, nah, man, I lost him here.
You're like, I want to keep
like,
all
how?
10.
He goes, frostbite's real, brother. I was like, man, they let you stay around? He goes, say if I can still hold a rifle and carry a rucksack, I can stay. It's up to me. And I'm just like thinking about like how crazy people are. Because what happens is if you don't earn, I'll fast forward a little bit, but like those 6 letters, they sound like they're not, I mean, it's just not a machismo, like superficial school. When you get to your unit,
you can't be machismo superficial to get through it, right? Like it strips it away. That doesn't work.
No, it doesn't. And you can only like boast up for the first day or 2. And then after a while, like God and Mother Nature takes over. And it just like at some point, who you are will actually come out when under that amount of duress. And the reason that's important is because when all these, it's senior kind of sergeants and officers that go to these guys that like are going to be leaders in combat. Because when you eventually go to wherever you're going to go into the world to your unit, everybody arrives, and what ends up happening is, and I'm kind of paraphrasing it here, but basically what happens is the senior commanders there, all the battalion and brigade commanders are literally seeing who's coming in. And if you do not have a Ranger tab, if you're not Ranger qualified, if you're not somebody you do not get troops. That's just how it works. You get put up on staff or in the background doing like administrative work. And it isn't a way to just be mean to people, but their whole thing is they recognize you're a young leader. You're somebody who doesn't have a lot of military experience yet, but you're going to be responsible for 40 souls and the mission of America, whatever that might be. You must have that. In their mind, like, you must have that on your shoulder, because it's the only way that you have a chance at the beginning to inspire your men to know that, okay, at the very least, they know he can do hard things. He can also like push his body to the limits. And there were a ton of Rangers under immense stress that still said he was allowed to stay, which means he's probably a good guy. And so that's like the only reason they will not put you in front of troops is because they know that just like anywhere, like a sports team, you're going to show up to that locker room and they're going to like look over and they're going to go, if he's got one, all right, he's at least got the opportunity to impress me. If you don't even have one, good luck, man. And so like these guys are like, what's wrong? They kind of think it's like a defective, like what's wrong with this guy? You know, something happened. And so that's why these leaders will bury them in admin and like put them in the back house doing paperwork until they can either go back again or unfortunately never get the opportunity.
Wow. You said something really interesting that I want to kind of unpack. You said that, you know, only under like an extreme amount of duress, you find out who you really are. So do you think your version of yourself is only revealed through really hard things like that? Or do you feel like you have different versions of yourself?
Yeah, I think you actually are. I think you actually get to see this raw form of who you are in a world where we do it all the time, whether it's in a business, in a boardroom, you know, in your family. There's this kind of armor, there's this expectation shield that we all put on, you know, and sometimes unintentionally. Y'all have definitely been in this situation where like at some point, so many days in a row of being overly stressed, hungry, angry, whatever these emotions are going through your mind, you cannot be anything else but who you actually are. And so, you know, like it is just what it is. And so for me, I got to see a lot of different versions of that. In a way, also, you're kind of, before entering there, you're kind of afraid of what it is. It's a little bit like, I mean, kind of unfortunately the other direction, like when someone has had too much to drink, they kind of act a certain way. I feel like it's a bit of a version of that, where it's like when you start stripping it all away, one of the things that might keep you up at night is what is going to be there? Like, who is this person? I hope it's okay. I found that about myself that I was happy to see what was, you know, for me, I became, folks who know me generally, I think would see myself with maybe a certain, at least is what my wife tells me, there's a level of intensity for sure. But she's like, when those things happen, she actually looks forward, me and her look forward to going to the mountains together. So she goes, because you become a little more lighthearted. There is a bit of this, like, you kind of use humor as a way to kind of heal people in those moments. And then I've also learned that in those moments, I've stayed, thankfully, man, there's more calm that comes. I don't know where it comes from. The opposite happens for some people where more panic sets in. But to me, to answer your question, Matt, I think you do start to really get a true look into who you are, at least without all your armor. You know, the armor can definitely play into who people think we are. But I think that's one of those things where the military has got a really good wisdom about also getting to see, like, okay, when the crap hits the fan, like, what's this guy going to be?
That's incredible. So what did you learn about yourself then through that? I mean, because I'm sure before you're like, okay, I've been pushed a little bit, but nothing to this extreme. Were you happy with what you found? You know, you mentioned your wife said you're a little more lighthearted, which is crazy because I see people under stress and they're usually kind of mean or they're kind of like snappy or short or, you know, dysregulated. And it sounds like you're saying the exact opposite.
I didn't know what I was going to find. I'll give a quick story and then I think it'll kind of tie into it. Like, I remember a buddy of mine, him and I had continued. Fortunately, him and I didn't have to repeat anything. We just made it all the way through, which is pros and cons. The con is that, like, you don't ever get to, like, catch up on rest. The pro is that, like, you just get done. And so, so you end up, you know, because when you do recycle, they give you a little bit of time to reset, kind of eat a little bit better, and then, like, get back into it again. So we did, and this is why we looked like victims come out of this thing, man. Like, it was pretty bad. So we get done, but there was this time where at the end in swamp phase, where we're both on this machine gun team. We're both switching off. He's carrying the big gun, the big pig, and I'm carrying all the ammo and the tripod, and we're going through the swamps. They're about up to chest deep, and just navigating snakes around, I mean, just like, think about the swamps of Florida. This is where we're going. And we're literally moving to the objective in the swamp. We paddle to this drop-off point for a couple kilometers. We get off. We are at chest high water for 7 or 8 kilometers more in the middle of the night. And then we are getting to the point where we're going to raid or do an ambush or do an attack or whatever on this objective. And then we're going to go do the same thing all the way getting back out. And so we're there, and there's this spot where my buddy Mike, we're walking through the thing. He's in front of me. And all of a sudden, you can barely see the silhouette of Mike. And then all of a sudden, I don't see Mike anymore. But I hear a bloop. And I'm like, oh, and I go, where the heck's Mike? And I realize, I look down and it's just dusk. So the light's coming down, but it's just silhouette. And I see these little bubbles coming out of the water, and he's down there. And he just had, like, he went well over, I think he hit a big root. And so he's basically in the drink. And I'm coming up on him, and I'm like, oh, crap. And so I'm like pulling Mike out. And he's heavy, man. Mike weighs 150 pounds plus 100-pound rucksack. And I'm trying to get him out of there. And I finally pull him out. And I just smiling at him. And I'm just like, dude, man. And he goes, I go, man, you almost died. And he looks at me and he goes, you should have left me down there, man. But in this moment, I realized, like, in this amount of suffering, I, for some reason, become a lot more just light. And I don't know what it is, man. I don't know if it's because it's the only reaction you have with all those kind of crazy inputs or what. But what I've learned about myself in those moments is that, and I'm not sure I knew this before this, but what I learned about myself and what I learned about people is that humor is an immense way to heal during intense times. You know, not to make a mockery. There's a difference. Like, you still want to acknowledge, like, this is what I did. I literally looked at Mike and go, like, dude, you almost died. And he's like, you should have left me down there. We both were being humorous to each other, even though we had no reason to be. But in that moment, it allowed a moment for us to go, like, okay, we can continue on. Whereas, like, the other version would have been something just way more stressful or whatever it might be. So I think what I learned about myself was just that even in the hardest and darkest times, humor delivered in the right ways can be really healing. And I took that with me. I took that with me for the rest of my life and the rest of my career. And then I think the other thing that, as you were asking that question, Matt, the thing that came through my mind is, I think all of us have the ability to extract more out of who we are through these trials. But I do recognize that there is a group of folks that for some reason are just bred to be, like, even, I don't know why. I don't know how to explain it, but there is something in the DNA, in the spirit, that allows you to be even more so that way. And I think I find that I'm happiest in those environments for prolonged periods of time. I can't explain why. And I can't explain why I continue to keep my wits about myself. But the only thing that I can chalk it up to is that God's got a different purpose for me. And I think just like all of us, there's people who can, like, string a violin in a way that's incredible, or other folks that can solve for cancer. For me, the harder, the rougher, and the more austere the environment, the more I light up. I do not know why, but it is just true. And I think with ranger training, that taught me that it wasn't just something I was earning, but it gave me a glimpse into a world that I wanted to continue to find myself in. And I think that just stayed with me at my core. The military did it was easy in the military. I got to do those jobs all the time. The civilian life is where I had to like find it on my own, which probably allowed me to build a business around doing that. But yeah, those are the things I learned about myself and continue to learn about myself.
That's awesome. I mean, you hear people talk about, what's inside of you is what comes out of you, right? If you squeeze an orange, what comes out is orange juice, right?
Yeah.
If you squeeze a lemon, lemon juice, I guess. I mean, that's essentially what you're saying, but it scares me for sure, hearing just like being pushed to that limit, but knowing what came out of you. I mean, that's just so beautiful. And so where'd you go from there, right? So after this experience being a ranger and going through ranger school, and so you get no sleep, like what was the next step then?
You get minted with your tab, and then you go straight to I didn't have anything else after that. So I went straight to Alaska for 6-7 month train up. And then the boys and I were straight on small outposts on the Afghan-Pakistan border.
Wow.
Right in the middle of the heat. Actually, where we were on this small outpost, just 2 ridgelines over was the main Taliban training camp. And so our entire job was very kinetic. It was very much like, as my senior boss at the time would say, he goes, there's peacekeeping missions, there's protection missions, there's other things. He goes, your job, Joseph, is to keep the grass mowed. Nothing else, man. He goes, these boys are going to pour over that mountain and go into the rest of the world. You and the boys, and actually had a West Point classmate that was the sister platoon leader that actually groomsman of my wedding. He's like, your entire job is just to keep as many of those bad guys from coming over into the rest of the world, because that's it. In a way, it made it very straightforward. It was very just kinetic. You want to talk about training and doing the thing you trained for? That was it. I didn't have to be a diplomat. I didn't have to be a peacekeeper or a guy who delivered health supplies or none of those things to kind of do that. It was just fight. And so that's what it was. It was 7 months there, 7 months training in Alaska. It's kind of a funny thing, but Afghanistan, people I think Afghanistan and Iraq kind of similar. They could not be further from. They're so different, man. Like one's like in the Hindu Kush, which is Afghanistan. It's very mountainous. It snows. It's cold. Our outpost was 8,500 feet. That's where we lived.
Oh wow!
And we would fight all the way up to 14,000 feet. I mean, we would either fly or hike in or do these things. So that's where I spent the next year of my life, over in Afghanistan. And you want to talk about just like a baptism in fire. Thankfully, all the training was immediately applicable. It wasn't like I trained and then like I went and worked a desk job for a little bit. It was like you immediately went out there. And so I got to apply a lot of those lessons learned and what I learned about myself straight into it. It's a good time. And at the same time, you talk about like the chapter 2 of ranger training. Like it was also one of those, like I learned even more in that situation about not only about myself, but about like everything else was kind of in this.
It was simulated. Everything before that was simulated.
Yeah. Yep. And now, I remember one of my first boys getting killed, thinking, okay, this isn't simulation rounds anymore. And, these kinds of things, like these are real consequences and things that you didn't train for. No matter what, I mean, I studied everything from MacArthur's, Incheon thing in Korea, all the way to like what Patton did, small unit tactics, or ranger training. You learn how to move, through the night and be, all these things. And no one prepares you for like things that nobody, not even a single West Point class taught me how to like call the parents of somebody I just lost. Those kinds of things that you just like, where's the book on that? And I think you realize that there are things that are just almost unteachable unless you just go through that kind of level of suffering. And I think for me, as I think about that time and as I think about being in the mountains with the guys, what I think I realized is that more than ever, as much as it was like, I mean, by the end of that year, it was like Lord of the Flies, man. I mean, I don't think people could recognize us. We were just like hardened dogs out there. I mean, even to the point where, even when getting back and talking to my soon-to-be fiance, she just like, it just took a while. She goes, you just were like hardened leather for a dog who just been kicked over and over again and lived outside. You just were different. You almost had to like come back down. But even through all of that, I think I learned that like keeping the humanity there in one way, shape, or form was just so important, whether it's through humor, whether it's through little things like, I kept a book of all my guys' birthdays, and we couldn't do anything special out there. We were on this we were in this outpost that like what we would do is wear our clothes straight we'd sew holes and stuff. We would wear like clothes straight for a month, and then a helicopter would come and drop off new uniforms. Hopefully it was the right size. Everybody wears medium regular. And so we just like drop off the uniform, and then we just burn the other clothes. They just burn them and then like put the new things on, and we're like, all right, here we go. And so it was one of those things where I think you realize, like, as much as you felt very much like a hardened tool, keeping the humanity was the way that, like, it was like the grounding rod. It was the way to get back to normalcy. And there's little things that I learned there. It's things that, like, I don't know, the military taught me. It was just being with these guys in hard situations over and over again. Where I realized very quickly that, like, okay, no matter what, man, every day or every week, do something that reminds us of a time that isn't here, and not as a way to like be nostalgic about it, but just to remind us of, like, at the end of the day, who we are. We're these humans that we're going to go back home, and we're going to be required to integrate back into society. And so whether that's just going by and like we were taking gun trucks out, or we're jumping on helicopters. If it was one of my guys' birthday, I'd be like, hey man, by the way, happy birthday. And one, it'd go like, how's the boss even remember that? But that little just small level of humanity, and if we got back, usually what we do is like get some crappy MRE cake and like put a little candle in it and just kind of wish them a happy birthday, no candles because you can't like, give away your
no light.
Yeah. Yeah. Light discipline, but fake blow it out or whatever it might be. And so, but yeah, that was what I did after that. Afghanistan was Ranger school was on one level. That first kind of way out the gate was a whole different level of things.
There's so many things to dive into with what you just said, but one of the things that I think is powerful, just in general. First, I hate that we live in a world where people, have to or choose to or need to or are forced to live in that way, right? Where putting your life on the line and the people that you love and care about put their life on the line. But I'm grateful for the people that have done it. So thank you. But there's another piece of it where there is a space in life for people to be an example in the extreme, how to survive. So for many of us who don't live in the extreme, can see what humans are capable of, like keeping your humanity in that type of environment. And this idea of a touchstone, or like this lightning rod, or just something, we just had to touch it once a week, just in a way that, hey, I'm Joseph Cabrera from South Texas. I had a mom, I had a dad, I have friends, I'm a human, and I'm going to be back there sometime. What are those touchstones in life? And I think that's so powerful for people who are in it, not as deep as you were, but they're in it for themselves. Mm-hmm. That find those touchstones, man. Might be a song, it could be some silly ritual, it could be a little bit of a joke, like whatever it is, but just that reminder that, this is who I am. And the circumstances I'm in right now might force me to be somewhere else or be someone else, but I'm still me.
Yeah, it's so incredibly important to have those. Yeah, it's something that as you move on through life, whatever it might be, whether you're wearing a CEO hat or you're training for a marathon, whatever it might be, like some of my favorite moments are even when you see these world-class athletes at the Olympics and they take a minute, they see their kiddo like out in the, out on the cheering stands, and they just go out there and give them a quick hug and they keep running. I don't know why, man. That fires me up. And it fires me up because you see the eliteness that is happening while also recognizing that person was something else before. And in maybe another way, like something even more important than that, And I think, yeah, who we are and how we are, I think in those moments are as important as anything else. You sparked a story in my brain there, Nathan. You both did talk about just kind of, what do you learn about yourself? Whether it's Ranger training at West Point and then in Afghanistan. And I also recognize like people watch all the time, and they're watching for the things that I think all of us don't recognize they're watching. And one of the things I learned about at Ranger training was like one of the first things you do that first week, all it is, you're like in this kind of before they put you out in the field for extended periods of time. That first, it's not even a week, it's like 5 days. They put you in these moments of all they're doing is testing gates, how fast you can run, how many push-ups you can do. It's very like check the block. Can you pass how fast you put the weapon together? Can you do land navigation? All these things. One of the things they make you do is they make you climb this tall, I don't know, I'm going to make up a number, but it's like 3 stories high. Make you climb this tall log ladder. And then there's like a really like kind of smaller beam across, and you got to walk across this thing. 10, I don't know, it's probably like 20 or 30 yards. And then in the middle of it, they got these like 3 steps, which is just like unnerving to walk on like you're kind of walking this tightrope and whatever. And so you do it, and most folks can make it by. But then you do it and you climb this rope, you hit the ranger tab, and then you drop to the water. And so you climb this thing, this staircase. And what happens almost 50% of the time is the ranger instructor is watching you. And he doesn't care if you make it across or not. Most people can, especially if you've reached that level. Like most people are going to do it. But they'll make you do it over and over and over again. And what the saying that they had there was, you don't pass until you can walk across it like you're walking across the street. And it was such a weird, at the moment when I was a young officer, I was like, what the heck is this even for? And I think they realized like the wisdom in that is that it is not just about making it across the thing, but it's inspiring others to make it across the thing, and how you are in that moment matters. So you have to be cool. And so I remember fast forward, 7, 8 months later, I'm in Afghanistan. We're in the middle of the mountains. We're on a 10-day hump through the mountains. And I remember that being in my mind kind of subconsciously. And I remember walking to this very, very narrow pass, cliffside, just big drop, all the way down to the bottom. And then sheer mountain on one side. And I'm walking, and the ground just gives way. I got my rucksack on, weapon, night vision goggles, everything, and it just gives way. And the whole ground just like falls away. I do not know why, but at the moment, total God thing, but I like grabbed my hand on the last little ledge that I could grab. And you want to
like a movie. Like a movie.
Yeah, like a movie. And you want to talk about, my fingers have never been stronger, man. And so I'm just sitting there and I'm just holding on. And in that moment, there's like 2 options. There's like the human option, right? Which is like, and whatever. And just, I don't know, panic, because it is literally, just sheer death, fall to your death. And I remember one of my guys comes up, and he looks at me, and I could just, and the only thing, actually, in some ways, I'm glad I saw his face, was the first thing I saw. I grabbed this thing, and I'm, first of all, surprised I'm not like falling still. And I look up and I see him, and he's like this. He's just, I could tell like the words weren't even commuting, but everything in his face was telling me, he was like, dude, the boss is about to get killed right now. Like I'm about to see him fall to his death. And I remember in that moment going, hey man, do me a favor, is what I said to him. I'm like, hey man, do me a favor. And I got my rucksack on, it's just pulling me away from the mountain. And I'm like, hey man, grab my rifle real quick. Just grab my rifle. Okay, cool. And he's like, oh, okay, I can do that. And he grabs the rifle. Yeah. And I was like, hey, and do me a favor, just set that rifle down, get one of the other guys, and I'm like, see if y'all can pull me up this thing. And that was going back to the time at Ranger training where it was like, dude, in that moment I had a choice, freak out or be calm. Either way, I'm going to die. So if I die, I'm going to die, is my point. And so I have like a choice in that moment. And in that moment, I was like, okay, be calm. And I think I didn't realize I was going to apply that skill right away, but I realized in life, man, whether it's your kids or whether it's friends, they are watching not only what you're doing, but how you're doing what you're doing is even maybe more important.
Yeah. I have no words. You just, like, even how you're explaining this, you're talking with such like calmness, and I want to like scream into the mic and be like, "Are you kidding me? Like, are you okay? Like, that's insane."
Yeah,
like
Joseph, you probably didn't know this, but I think that's like one of Matt's greatest fears is the flip side of a mountain.
Yes, like my greatest fear. And you're like, hey, like hold out one arm with 100-pound like bag, and you're like, hey man, you got my rifle.
Do me a favor real quick.
Yeah, you're doing a favor. Like, see if you guys can pull me up right now, like as you're holding out with one arm. Holy crap! Here's what's like so amazing about like as you're talking about Ranger school and then real life. It's like what I'm getting is from all this is like it doesn't matter what it's for, right? If it's a simulated experience or if it's like real life experience, it's all an experience that shapes who you are in that moment. And I think it's such a great important lesson that I'm taking away from that, it's like, because so many times you're playing a game or you're playing, or like just with your kids, and you're like, well, this is like not a big deal, but like everything's a big deal. Like everything's an experience you can learn from and grow from if you have it, like have that perception and perspective. Like that's unreal, like that's just so, I don't know, like it just hits you deep, you know, as you're hanging off a cliff and pulling yourself up. Anyway, okay.
Yeah. No, you're dead right, man. There's as you were saying that story, Matt, it kind of went through my brain about like it happens in the talk about humanity, it happens in the smallest moments, but it only matters. This is the thing. This is like the recipe of life. The small things, in my opinion, they matter all the time, but they really matter in the most stressful situations. And so, like if us three were hanging out and we were like, we got stranded in the mountains for a long time, and we're sitting there, and we're probably like a day or two past, like we're probably going to start needing to ration or run out of food. If I were at that moment to split my bar and give you half of it, that normally wouldn't matter. If I was at the airport with you and we were
There's
traveling,
nothing.
I split, who cares, right? It's, oh, thanks, But at that moment, the character of like, you get to choose to do that or not. We've all been in that situation where like, this would be really great if I could just eat it all by myself. And I think in those moments is like when we get to demonstrate not only our humanity, but also the character of like who we want people to be. Because I've in life, you find that those moments are maybe not as frequent as we'd like them to be, but when they do happen, you really want to make sure you make the right call. And I think that in that moment, I was glad that I didn't, and I don't know if I can take a lot of credit for that. I mean, whether it's just God's peace or something, but whatever it was, man, I just like in that moment going, if I live, maybe if I was being really critical myself, I'd be like, if I live and do not fall to my death, I still got to fight with these boys for like a year. It'd be really weird if I start screaming right now, And so, maybe I need to chill out. And I mean, again, there's probably some humor there, but I do think like we get to choose. We get to choose how we are in those moments. And those moments, in my mind, only matter if you're like in really trying times. Otherwise, they're just, I don't know, they're common.
It's between stimulus and response that the true character of who you are is made, right?
Yeah.
And I just can't help but also think like it's wonderful to have examples of people that make those right decisions. But I also think that it's okay. Like part of what we're here on Earth to do is to learn. And if you have been in those positions and haven't made those right decisions, you use it as a learning moment so that next time you know better, right? Next time you're like, oh, okay, well, now I know what that feels like. And I let the stimulus overcome me and I responded in a way I'm not proud of. It's like, okay, just learn from it. The next time you could practice, right? You could practice again and you could do something a little different.
No, that's right, man.
Is the only way to get there is to put yourself in those situations, or is there like things you like practice ahead of time, Because it seems like you just kind of jumped in the deep end of the pool and like, all right, the stimulus, I'm going to learn to swim. Oh, I didn't like that. I'm going to try it again.
Yeah, I think that's a killer reflection, man. I think you can, I think in an effort to set yourself up for success, I think you can do some things that will prepare your heart because in those moments, as Nathan just said, you don't really have a lot of time to think about how you're going to be. And so I think you can war game in your mind, but I've always felt that to be like not as authentic. I find that like if you can just spend some time and some deep reflection thinking about, and maybe even reflecting on other hard moments that people have gone through, this is where I think you can learn a lot from like what people are. I mean, I'm just a sucker for a great intense story because I get to understand the character of others and like what it means. And I think even right before, if I thought about it, like even right before that moment, if I was going to share like how I was practicing, before that moment on the mountain, there was a situation where we were like going a pretty long extended mission just because we had to stay out there a little longer than expected beyond food and water. And every night we had slept on the top of a mountain, freezing, barely getting any sleep. Half the boys are up at any time pulling security. The rest are trying to get a couple of Z's before and they switch over. And then the next day we'd move them into contact, find the next, pocket of bad guys or whatever it might be. We're out there for a very extended period of time. And I remember we were almost, my right-hand man was like, he's like, hey, sir, we got a couple days, and if we're not getting on birds to get back home, like we're gonna need to, like the boys are burning more calories than we got, and we're really gonna need to figure out like how to like not only keep their mind right and their bodies right, but keep their spirit going because they know that too. It's not like a secret that that's happening. And so we that moment, instead of camping on the mountain that day, I realized I was like, okay, we need to do something. In my mind, I was like, what is the boost of morale that I can give them that'll allow them to, because I knew they were physically capable of going harder. Why? Because I had gone through ranger training and known that the body can basically.
You could go down from 170 pounds to 140 pounds.
Exactly right. And you start to smell like sulfur because that is the smell of your body eating its own muscle. And so, if you ever get to a point where you're out for a long period of time, like, why do I smell like match heads? It's because your body is like no longer eating its fat; it's eating its muscle for sustenance. And so I was like, we can technically.
Good to know, Joseph. Totally going to use that little factoid in my life.
Yeah,
Right.
like,
oh my gosh.
hey, do I smell like sulfur right now? Yeah. So, it's like a pneumonia sulfur kind of feel. So anyway, we were out there, and I remember the guys. I remember thinking to myself, okay, how do I establish some level of hope here? And so what we had done, instead of camping on the mountain that day, we had found this abandoned kalat. It's basically like a clay house. It didn't even have a roof on it. So like, even if it got rained on, we were still going to get wet. But what I had told the boys, I had stepped my sniper team out on a rotation on the top of one of the ridge lines, but had a few of them like rotate. It was 3 guys on that team, so I had them rotate in and out. And then I had some boys kind of push out in security, but the rest of the team was in this kalat, and they would rotate in. Guys would get in and out. And what I would do is I tell them, I said, look, find every dry shrub you can find and every, piece of whatever that will burn, and let's get a small little fire going inside here. We can't do it on the mountains because it gives your heat signature, your light signature away. But in this moment, I was like, let's do this to give a little bit of hope. And I get to like see them as I kind of panned around throughout the evening, just kind of be re-energized with some level of hope. And so going back to your statement there, Matt, about like, how do you prepare for these things? I think in that moment, I looked at them and I remember to myself, okay, these little things that you can just, if I can just reestablish hope in even a small way, I think I can get folks to push a little further. I can get them to go a little longer. And I think that was like we weren't being shot at that point in time. We were just kind of like trying to make it to this objective. I think I realized in that moment that these small moments of hope can go a long way to get people to just push a little further. And I think that's what started to plant the seeds of those later on intense moments where I was like, okay, even in this moment as I'm falling down the mountain, how do I establish hope right now in this guy? And if I remain calm, then he'll think I'm not going to die. And then we can maybe figure out how to get out of this thing.
Wow.
Well, so Joseph, you're going to have to come back, man.
Okay.
Yes.
Because
Yes. Oh my gosh.
we hardly got anywhere in your life. But it was like, there's so much. I mean, your stories are amazing. Just chock full of learning. I mean, man, thank you so much for sharing that. But so we are going to have you back again.
Yes.
But we wanted to have you on specifically, and again, it depends on when people listen to this, but in August, Joseph and I are going to team up. And we're going to lead a group of people, most of which have never been to a mountain summit above 14,000 feet. And we have about 14 people because, do a 14er with 14 people, right?
You have to.
Matt's one of them.
Ew.
But we wanted, our listeners, our audience, the people that we're working with, to kind of get to know you a little bit as you kind of jump into the story as Matt pursue our 6 and 26, and part of that is just not for the two of us to accomplish things, but also to bring people along with us. So I'm really excited to have you on that trip and do it with you, and just learn from you as you help guide that adventure up the mountain.
Fired up to do it with you, man. It's gonna be a great trip.
Yeah, the top of Colorado.
The top, man. The very top.
The very top of Colorado.
Yeah, the very top. It's gonna be awesome. I think it's the highest in this. I mean, that's quite the accomplishment going out there, man. So everybody will make it to the top.
Yeah, everyone will make it.
No
to the
one's
top.
falling, Matt. Nobody's falling.
Yeah.
Well, now with you there, I feel great. I have confidence in you.
I personally know every single person that has said yes to go on this adventure with us, and I'm with you. Everyone's going to make it to the top.
Everyone. Yeah. Everyone.
Yeah.
It's gonna be awesome.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So, but before we sign off, we have to ask the question that we ask everybody, and really excited to hear your insight on it. But when you think about everything that you've been through and everything you've pushed past, which we have just barely scratched the surface, what remains?
Someone useful. I think is what remains. Somebody who shared suffering and pain for no other reason other than for myself to reflect on it is got some value. But in my own personal life, and maybe we can dive into this next time around, I think I recognize like looking at our suffering and not really even sure why it's happening can be a hard task to reconcile. But I think if you recognize that finding a way to share that with others and then maybe even better experience it with others, you become useful to others. And I think to me, as I get older in my life, I recognize that there's a lot of adjectives that I think I would have enjoyed and been fired up about, around others. But now if I walk away from a situation or an experience and someone found what I've experienced, what I've talked about, or what I've shared with them is useful, it's a good day. So I think what remains after all this is hopefully being useful to the greater good and other people in God's green earth.
Well, that's Joseph's story. And like every story on this show, the finish line wasn't the point.
If something in this episode stayed with you, write it down, sit with it, and then go do something with it.
If you're not on your path yet, this is your sign to start. It doesn't have to be big, it just has to be real.
New episodes are dropping all the time. Subscribe so you don't miss the next one. And if this show meant something to you, share it with one person who needs to hear it.
I'm Nathan Baumeister.
And I'm Matt Carlson.
This is What Remains, an Okapi podcast. We'll see you next time.